Welcome to Therapy Inspired. As therapists, we have a unique view of the world. We hold space for grief and trauma, yet we also witness resilience and healing, all while being humans ourselves. We hope to share helpful psychoeducational insights from our world as psychotherapists in and out of the therapy room. And while we'll be talking about things therapy related, listening and engaging in this podcast doesn't equate a client therapist relationship. And though we might be using insights from our work with various clinical issues, we don't reference specific cases.
Hi, I'm Kameela Osman. I'm a registered social worker and a psychotherapist. I have a practice in Bowmanville, Ontario, where I see clients in person, and I practice throughout Ontario as well as see other clinicians for supervision.
My name is Darby Crosby. I'm a registered psychotherapist and a registered marriage and family therapist. I have a virtual clinic in Ontario where I see individuals, couples, and families. And I also offer supervision services to other clinicians. Today, we're going to be talking about the nervous system as running the show, understanding our body's role in our own mental health. Did you know that your stress and anxiety and even your happiness can be controlled by your nervous system? Most people think that mental health is all in the brain, but your body also plays a very important role. So we have seen studies that show chronic stress can physically change the way our nervous system responds, making potentially anxiety and burnout worse. So we need to be able to find a way to acknowledge our nervous system on a day-to-day basis.
And so our nervous system is that the nerves from our brainstem down into our body, and it's activated by our threat response. So we've got, you can kind of think of it like the accelerator and the brakes. We've got our sympathetic nervous system that puts us into fight or flight and gets us activated to get to safety. It's our response system in our body. And then we've got our parasympathetic nervous system, which will bring us down from that. And so knowing how to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, what are tools and strategies to get back to that place where we have calm and regulation in that body is a key to mental health and wellness because, it's knowing when to hit that brakes and when to, when truly do we need to be hitting that accelerator. One of the things that can help us, like we've talked about many times, is like knowledge is power. So even just knowing that we've got these two systems and it is kind of an accelerator brakes in our body can help us identify, okay, is this stress that I'm feeling right now, is it actually a fire? Is it actually a crisis? Or can I press that brakes a little bit? We have that awareness of choice by becoming aware of the labels and being mindful of how that anxiety and stress, trauma is stored in the body. Sometimes working with clients, and maybe you see this too at times, Darby, there are clients who've had traumatic experiences, and it may not always be traumatic experiences. Sometimes it's adverse experiences or stress, chronic stress. And sometimes that like brakes accelerator system is just kind of stuck. And so we're stuck in activation and our body thinks there's always a fire. And it's learning, it's recognizing that we're stuck. It might be a first step. And then the second step is learning to practice safety, learning to practice, okay, I'm here in this room as a simple strategy, using mindfulness tools to come back to activating that parasympathetic nervous system. And, in a while, we'll talk about different strategies for activating that. But even just knowing sometimes that does get stuck. And especially if we've had, as I said, trauma, adverse experience, chronic stress, chronic anxiety, it can lead to that system being on when it doesn't necessarily need to be on. And there's a whole sort of cascade of issues that can come with that. That chronic being on can lead to inflammation. It can lead to heart issues. It can lead to ulcers, like body-based health issues from a mental health issue, from an emotional struggle that may, again, come from stress or anxiety.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes we don't really realize that our body is really interconnected. So for example, like a lot of people are reading a lot or hearing a lot about this brain gut sort of connection, where a lot of our serotonin, which is sort of that happy hormone is being created in our gut. About 95% of it is being created in our gut and is sent to our brain to keep us sort of more regular. And so again, what we need to think about is if our gut makes all of that stuff, if our gut is the place where that starts, we need to start looking at our diet. Like, are we eating foods that are helping our body to get stronger and to be more balanced and having the tools to sort of manage that? Are we eating too many processed foods that are not necessarily supporting what we're doing and we want to do? Are we getting enough sleep, right? Because sleep is where our body sort of heals itself and sort of consolidates learning throughout the day and helps us to be more grounded and feeling safe throughout the day. If we don't get sleep, I mean, there's a lot of stuff where poor sleep also increases stress hormones or emotional sort of dysregulation on some levels. And again, it makes it harder for us to concentrate. So we do want to get a lot of restful sleep, not just sleep, but restful sleep to be able to help our brains function more clearly. And when I say restful sleep, I mean the sleep that comes sort of naturally. Like, we don't want to be using drugs or other kinds of products to put us to sleep, which may not allow us to have as much REM sleep, which is the healing part of our brain. We also want to be able to do movement because that also, like, exercise is a great antidepressant. It releases endorphins, it releases dopamine, makes us feel good. I know some people are probably saying, it does make me feel good, it hurts. But if we can get sort of through some of that, right, and start to get out, have a bit of fresh air, get a little bit of light into our eyes, we can start to feel a little bit better and less sort of heavy, I guess, is one way I look at it. Have you felt that other people feel heavy sometimes,
Yes,
Kameela? Yeah.
absolutely. And you know what's interesting is as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking, people might wonder, why are two therapists talking about this body-based experience or even the nervous system overall? But there is this myth, and I know we've covered myths on therapy, but one of those myths are that therapy is more talk-based. But we actually do work from both ends of it, that top-down strategy where we're using, yes, cognition and self-talk, affirmations, alternate thoughts to soothe the body and the body's stress. And sometimes when we're talking about the nervous system, like today, we're talking and speaking more about body-based strategies, how to activate that nervous system, how to release stress in the body to soothe and calm the mind. It is a feedback loop. And I'm always blown away by those facts around the
Mhm.
gut health, the processed foods, sometimes just talking about challenging yourself. Notice what happens when you eat certain types of foods versus other foods. See if you can shift that diet for a week and see if
Right.
there's a difference. I know for myself when I follow my naturopath's instructions and eat, in terms of what they recommend, I thrive. I have more energy. Even something as simple as like hydrating and drinking
Mhm.
water makes a difference that lots of us will sometimes neglect. And so there's lots of strategies that sometimes fall to the wayside because we write it off. Sometimes a lot of the nervous system strategies that we talk about for engaging that parasympathetic nervous system, we may think it's so simplistic, it's not actually going to make a difference, like with processed foods and whatnot. But when we, as I said, like knowledge is power, when we become mindful that these strategies, something like breath work or cold exposure, they sound simplistic, but they have a science to it. There's a reason why it's working. And that's why we're weaving like these are not just things that feel good or calm us down. We are activating our nervous system in a positive way. We're activating that parasympathetic nervous system that helps us hit that brakes for that activation that's often associated with being dysregulated. And so being mindful that when we're doing those deep breathing activities, it shifts that nervous system. It brings us into something called rest and digest. So instead of being active and feeling like we need to fight or run away from something, we're coming into, okay, this is calm. I can internalize, I can process now. Taking cold showers or cold water on the face is great for anxiety, great for if we're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, angry. It taps into that nervous system. There's a particular nerve as part of our parasympathetic nervous system called the vagus nerve. And so a lot of these strategies activate that vagus nerve. And some of it, when I'm speaking to clients, I'll say, like, your body does know. Your body will likely ask you to do some of these things if you're looking for signs. You may notice that, your leg shakes when you're nervous. Your body wants to move. It wants to release that, that energy. And that shaking, whether it's the leg or like lean into it, do a full body shake. You will notice that activates the vagus nerve in particular, and that parasympathetic nervous system, and you can come back to calm. And so there's lots of other strategies such as grounding or sensory therapy, walking barefoot. I've also seen, Darby, I know we've talked about this in the past, the grounding mats, and I'm not plugging the grounding mats, but walking bare feet on the ground, using tools and strategies like that grounding mat or anything that's going to create a sense of grounding, nature exposure, which is another thing, you may hear of, what's it called? Forest bathing.
Bathing.
That, yes, that can be very grounding. And they're finding that there is a science to it. Also, I find it interesting, as someone who comes with a background of like Eastern medicine and connections there, that a lot of these, the way I say the body knows, a lot of these practices in Eastern medicine, we're finding is very valid for treating trauma, very valid and accurate for activating that vagus nerve and that
Mhm.
parasympathetic nervous system. Things like aromatherapy, sound therapy, acupuncture. And then, of course, we can tap into daily habits, stretching. I know you talked about body movement. That can make a difference. Something simple as walking, as you mentioned, body movement. Actually has a connection to what's called bilateral stimulation when we're activating both sides of our body in that rhythmic way. The bilateral stimulation stimulates both sides of the brain, and it can create calm. And actually, Darby, you do the safe and sound protocol, which is a whole
Yes.
other modality of therapy. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how that ties in here?
Certainly. It was a process that was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, who was the founder of the polyvagal theory. And what he's found is that he has created different things that allow for filtered music at different levels of intensity, which, like the sound therapy you mentioned earlier, it helps the nervous system to sort of relax and to sort of calm down. So you listen to this filtered music over a period of time, and it settles your system. So he gives an example that some of the sounds, like people say, well, how does music help, right? But when you think about a baby, like if it's crying and you hold the baby, he or she is listening to the sound through your chest, right? So he's kind of feeling it, he's kind of hearing it, and our voice changes. Like we would be saying, it's okay, calm down. And so that's kind of that same sort of filtering that you would see in the safe and sound protocol. And so again, you would have to reach out to somebody that does the protocol and have access to the music
Yeah.
to use it to stabilize. So certainly seeing a lot of different changes in people as a result of using it. Yeah,
And
it's
it's
kind of
very
neat.
cool. I know that we've collaborated at times, and so it's really cool to see that difference. And certainly using bilateral stimulation, I've seen that too, that
Yeah.
it can have such a powerful shift, especially when clients are stuck, as I mentioned, they're stuck in that always activated mode.
Hmm.
And need to find that safety, that embodiment. And it always reminds me again of that Eastern medicine piece of, like sound bowls and chanting is part of my culture. And, it's interesting to see these tie-ins of the hertz, and
Hmm.
how that's been proven to create calm. And then the safe and sound
Right.
protocol, activates that. It brings that science and Eastern medicine together in this beautiful way that is
Right.
effective for clients.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, like humming, for example, like sometimes we'll just find ourselves humming And I don't know what it is, but whether it's the vibration or just the fact that we're making a sound, sort of like a
We
mantra
do
or
have the
whatever else.
vagus nerve going
Yes.
through
Yeah.
there and again that I often say, like, when I look at that vagus nerve, the images of that, it's the chakra systems in some ways too. They have those
Yeah.
spiders that go along in those
Yeah.
centers. And whether that's accurate or not, because I'm not a medical doctor, it's interesting that these strategies we're talking about,
Right.
like humming, or tapping,
Mhm.
coincide with that.
Yeah, and the vagus nerve is, as you said at the very beginning, is one of the longest, biggest nerves, right? So it splits off to sort of meet all of the different areas. And you're right that, it may not be exactly the same in Western medicine as it is in Eastern medicine, but there's an incredible, when you think about meridian systems, which is an Eastern sort of philosophy, when you think about where acupuncture and the whole parts of acupuncture in our body, like there's a lot of overlap. And so, and these practices have been around, much longer than a lot of our sort of traditional medicines. And I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I'm just saying that they've been around for a very long time. So where did they emerge from? Right. And of course, sort of traditional, sort of allopathic medicine is very beneficial for many different things. We're not saying one's better than the other, but it's really important to look and make use of all of our techniques and skills for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, one of the things that we want to sort of look at here is just to remind ourselves that, if you want to sort of challenge, like Kameela was sort of saying earlier, if you want to challenge the foods that you're eating, or you want to eat differently, or you want to learn more about that, sort of gut and brain connection, reach out to the professionals that do this all the time, right? And get their input. If you want to sort of understand your nervous system more, do some reading, talk to your doctors, whatever, right? Because if we take care of our nervous system, we can reduce our stress, we can boost our mood, and we can feel more in control. And like you mentioned, also listening to your body. Like if you eat a hot dog at a fair and you feel, ooh, this doesn't feel so great, right? Maybe having a little bit of indigestion. Whereas when you eat a salad or some sort of, vegetable laden meal, you may feel a little bit better, right? So it's important to listen to that, right? And try to sort of do one of the resets we talked about, the breathing or the force bathing, right? And again, we hope that we have shared some useful information and that you have some good takeaways. And we'll see you next podcast.
Take care.
Bye-bye for now.